Raul Ramirez of the Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we help you elevate your grappling and together we keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I know it's Thanksgiving Day. So here in the United States, it's Thanksgiving Day today. And so most of us have the day off, or at least part of the day off. So want to try to do the podcast like before all the football games started. So, or before everyone started eating. So it's still kind of early in the morning. Well, at least in Los Angeles. So a lot of people might have already started eating, or maybe some football games might have started on the East Coast. But either way, I kind of wanted to talk about something. Hopefully, it can kind of maybe inspire you or help you think about like the way you approach wrestling or catch wrestling, or even like no-gi, submission grappling, stuff like that. So let's get to it. Well, if you want to train with us, we're still gonna, not tonight. The gym's gonna be closed tonight, but if you're in Los Angeles and you want to train with us, we train at Fight Science MMA. Also, too, if you're nowhere near us and you're on the East Coast, go train with my buddy John Strickland, American Hook Wrestling. You can find that on Facebook. Also, if you're nowhere near either of us, you can also train online, catchwrestlingalliance.com. If you just want to support us, feel free to join our YouTube channel. Any tier level is anything is supported. We have a bunch of extra videos and stuff there. So thank you. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right. So a few weeks ago, I was training at 10th Planet headquarters here in Los Angeles. It's in downtown Los Angeles. And one of my favorite instructors, we call him Coach Z. It's because he has a really long name, so everyone just calls him Z. He made a really good point, so I wanted to kind of share it. Maybe one day we'll get him on here, like on the podcast. I think he's pretty funny, and also he has a lot of good things to say. He's all about like inspiring people and stuff. So one thing he said I liked. So he was talking about kind of like the philosophy, not only of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu or No-Gi, but like the way you want to approach these sports, whether it be catch wrestling or jiu-jitsu, because there's so many big organizations. There's so many, at least in jiu-jitsu, right? And then there's so many tournaments. Like here in Los Angeles, in California, we have like jiu-jitsu tournaments like every weekend, virtually every weekend, right? And so a lot of them are points based, right? So they'll have like their own rule set, but a lot of it is based off of points, right? So going back to what Coach Z said, it was like you want to think about like when you approach no-gi and wrestling and stuff, what are you going to be? Are you going to be a point artist, or are you going to be a submission artist, right? Because I'm going to try to be a submission artist, right? And so even though the vast majority of like jiu-jitsu tournaments are points based or points oriented, you can still compete in them. You still have to know the rules if you want to compete in them, but are they like a true example of of what is like the point of these sports, whether it be no-gi or even catch wrestling? So in catch wrestling, yeah, we have the submissions, but we also have the pins and stuff, which are also kind of considered in a way a submission, because you've been able to stop the person and they can't move and they can't attack you. They can't attack you back, right? So you've in effect stopped them, and you can easily like transition to submissions, from there, right? If you're in like a no-gi situation, right, where they don't have pins, right? So like how are you going to think about this? And unfortunately, since there are like more points based tournaments, like I think we have to try to have more, not only catch wrestling tournaments, but in the jiu-jitsu world, that there can be more submission only tournaments. So I think that's the kind of the point of a lot of times like 10th Planet stuff. You don't necessarily see a lot of it, but they actually do a lot of uh like tournaments amongst themselves. So since it became so popular, right? So there's like a 10th Planet affiliate, like in so many different cities. So they do competition amongst themselves. So they'll do like quintet stuff, whether it's like a advanced group or blue belts and stuff like that. So um, they're always doing like submission only stuff, right? And so they will compete in like IBJJF and all that. Um, but it's like begrudgingly in a way. This is because IBJJF is so huge, then so many people like they'll consider that almost like the pinnacle of jujitsu, even though you can totally game that system because it's a point system, right? So you've had even this one black belt that used to teach at the when I used to teach at Cobrinia's, one of the Cobrinha affiliates here in Los Angeles. Um, One of the black belts there, who's actually really famous, and he's won the IBJJF black belt championship. He lost a match because one guy totally knows the system. So the way you can win in IBJJF is like if at the beginning of the match, if you can get a takedown or because like a lot of people will just pull guard. So if you can like as soon as you notice they're about to pull guard, if you can start pushing them forward, then it appears as though you initiated the takedown, and then you get 2 points. And then if you land like inside control, basically if you just land on top of them and hold them down for the next few minutes, then you've won that match. And so um, one of the black belts they used to teach at Cobrinia's lost a match that way. And so I'm sure a lot of people have lost to points by points and stuff like that, and it's really like in a way it's not fair in a way because a lot of times you might be in the middle of something, or you might have just run out of time, or you couldn't have countered them and whatnot. So um, it's always been my perspective that like points are not the way to go because yeah, you get people gaming that system. So in catch wrestling, since we don't have a point system, it's like what do we do? It's like it's based off of like the wrestling and the submission. So if you can't get a submission, who was the best wrestler at that time? So traditionally, catch wrestling had no time limit. Like you'd go until someone won, right? But nowadays, say like the way we do it, also the way it's done in Wigan, you'll have like a 20-minute time limit, or maybe even a 10-minute time limit if it's like a, um, say I think like in Wigan they're having like the qualifying things for like the British qualifiers and stuff like that for the World Championship. So I think they'll have like a shorter, like I think 8 or 10-minute match. Um, so either way, none of it is point based. But if someone lasts, if no one gets pinned or submitted in that shorter time limit, the winner is decided on judge's decision, and that's based off who was the better wrestler overall. So who controlled the other person better, who like maybe was on top the most, who had more submission attempts. Uh, so who dominated more, right? So that's basically how it's been decided. It's also we've had a few of those matches where it's gone the distance and nobody won. So we've had to decide, who based off who was the most dominant wrestler, and that in a way can be considered maybe a little bit more subjective, but overall, it shows like you can still argue like that whoever won was the most dominant, and we have video footage to support all of that, right? So um, it in a way it becomes less subjective in that way, but quite often points can be like more subjective because like you get a point for doing random things, or like in IBJJF they have advantages, so it's like not it's like these in between point kind of things where like if they think you did something that's like gives you an advantage over your opponent, then you can win. Like say if time runs out and you're tied, then if someone has an advantage or several advantages, those are all calculated, and you can win, right? Even if you tie. So that in that way it becomes subjective, because who, like say like from a wrestling point of view, right? Say like giving your back and stuff is not the end of the world. A lot of times it's a transition to, like, I'll use that a lot to pass people's guards when I roll in like a 10th planet or Daisy Fresh or whatever. um, you know so like say if I was doing that kind of thing, like if I didn't end up submitting the person in time, right? And a lot of times it's like a very short match, like 5 minutes or whatever. So if I don't submit the person in time, I might have lost due to some points because they believe that giving the back is bad. And so they could give like the other person some points as though they, or an advantage as though they were beating me or dominating me in some way, even though like I was setting up a submission and whatever, and I couldn't finish in time or something like that, but I still might have ended up on top or whatever. So that's the way you want to think. Like, and I think so. Like, say for the Catch Wrestling Alliance, we have that responsibility to maybe not to maybe to we have the responsibility to have more events, and actually we're hoping to have another one in December. But I think that's also the responsibility in jiu-jitsu, right? So um unfortunately, like we had Rose Gracie, so it's like one of the Gracie family members. She was one of the most outspoken Gracie member, where she was saying that like like jujitsu itself has lost a lot of the martial arts aspect, and she wanted to try to bring it back. And so she had her tournaments, and they were basically like ended up being like the 10th planet like Olympics, right? Because they were held here in Los Angeles most of the time, and but she was using the EBI, or the Eddie Bravo rules, which are pretty free, right? Except they don't, of course, they don't have pins, but submission only, and they have tiebreakers, which are submission based, like tie breaking, like overtime stuff. So in that way, Rose Gracie believed that we can kind of bring back like the whole martial arts aspect of jujitsu through these types of submission only rules, right? Or rule sets where there's no points, right? And so even taking it to like a historical aspect, right? So wrestling, and like the way my buddy, the historian Mike Chapman would say, is like, we have like some of the oldest books that archaeologists have found, right? And say we got some of the Bible, and then also one of the earliest ones called the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? So in the Old Testament and even Gilgamesh, there's like wrestling in it, right? So one of the first things that happens in the Epic of Gilgamesh, there's a wrestling match between like the people who end up being like the two main characters, but also in the Old Testament, we have the character Jacob wrestling what people say, like some people argue, right, whether it was just a regular human or it was an angel, right? But most of the time, it's considered Jacob wrestles an angel, right? And was it by points? Right? It's like there wasn't a point. They weren't thinking about points, right? So Gilgamesh, there's no points, right? And then also in the Old Testament, they weren't thinking IBJJF or anything like that. They were showing who's dominant, right? Who's the better person, or maybe who can get on top, stay on top, hold the other person down. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking of like dominating the other person. They weren't thinking about gaming a point system. All right, so I would just say it's like, think about that for yourself. I mean, do you want to approach your grappling in that way? Because you will see some comments every once in a while. It's been kind of more rare, where people totally comment from that like point perspective, right? And still they'll be like, "Oh, you're giving your back" or stuff like that. But like, there's so many counters if you give your back, right? So maybe we'll probably do a video about it. We're currently doing the system, or a series of videos about some of the fundamental things of catch wrestling. So We're still going to continue on that, but maybe we do another one about giving your back and how it's like not really very dangerous. Um, you know, so yeah, maybe we'll do some more on that. I think we definitely have done one or two, but yeah, we can continue with that. All right. Um, so other things you want to kind of think about, like, so are you going to be the type of person who wants to game a system? Not to say that competition isn't like good. I think even competing in point system matches can still make you better, but in not necessarily in the way that uh, would make you better overall. And at least in my opinion, it'll make you better in that you've gotten used to competition, so you understand the pressure, you understand um, like how it is, like just how tournaments work. Understanding that you have to kind of like warm up for your match, and you might have to wait a long time in between matches and whatnot. Or say like even on IBJJF, you they don't give you much time to wait in between some matches. I think you're supposed to get 5 minutes, but if you had like a really tough match, you're tired, someone's really coming at you really quick, and then so you get tired. So then sometimes 5 minutes doesn't seem like enough, right? Uh, and so even competing in these types of point matches, I think that you can try to get a silver lining from it, where it's like, yeah, you can get used to the pace, right? You can get used to the pressure, right? But I think ultimately we should be striving to beat the other person and not game a point system, right? I think we've even seen people who are like maybe so used to points that they even tried to put points into catch wrestling. That I think people pointed out to me that there's an organization trying to put points or point system into catch wrestling. It's not catch wrestling then, right? So it's gone to, I don't know, some other like amateur wrestling basically, or just back to jujitsu or something like that. So you want to be thinking like, who am I? Am I the point artist or the submission artist, right? So you want to be trying to get control of the person, not even thinking about like, oh, is the way I'm going about it gonna lose me points, or is the way I'm going about it going to give them an quote unquote advantage according to IBJJF? No, you want to beat that person, right? So you want to so in catch wrestling, you want to dominate where you can pin them, right, or submit them. That's what you really want to be thinking about, at least in my opinion. That's my perspective, and that's why when Coach Z said that in the Nogi Jiu Jitsu class, it resonated with me. So I really wanted to share that with everyone. So hopefully that can kind of inspire you to like rethink the way you approach your training, so that you can not necessarily be thinking like, oh, is this okay? Because what I'm about to say is like, I've seen it in so many schools, because so many jiu-jitsu schools are IBJJF oriented. So then people will be like, oh, can white belts do this, or is this okay in IBJJ? It's like I don't know. I think we should just create an alternate, or at least more uh, submission only tournaments and catch wrestling tournaments that are authentic catch wrestling. So what that means, no points, right? We might have to have a time limit, because especially if you want to do tournaments, then if you have several people, you have to have a time limit. Otherwise, the tournaments will take days. So with that being said, we're hoping to do another catch wrestling event here in Los Angeles in December, probably like mid-December. So I think that one of the weekends is like the 12th or something, but I got to double check. Probably that weekend. So if you're going to be in the Los Angeles area, because so many people say like, oh, whatever, you should have let me know, or whatever. Hey, we're letting you know now. We're doing it. All right. So if you want to compete in authentic catch wrestling, so that means no points, right? You want to really try to beat your opponent, right? Then you can contact us through all like like through our Facebook, Instagram, our Twitter, whatever. I think even our Instagram. If you message, I think there's like a button where you can even email us or whatever. So, um, I believe, but either way, you can message, and if you want to participate, and then we'll solidify all the details soon. But I'm pretty sure we'll be on, like, and we'll have it. We'll have it. So, all right. With that being said, if you're going to try to like compete in catch wrestling, think about what you want to do. So, and actually, if you want to compete in catch wrestling, you can't be this point artist. Or, yeah, you can't be a point artist because you're gonna lose, right? You can't just be thinking about, you say, even points in freestyle or folk style. It's not enough, right? So thinking about getting points in those uh, derivatives of catch wrestling, they've gone so far away from like the original source that now they have a lot of points, and you can win by gaming that system as well, getting takedowns, letting them up, taking them down again, getting them up, or taking them down and rolling them around 3 or 4 times, and then you can win. So even though people are trying to say like, oh, this is real wrestling, with regards to freestyle and folk style, like think back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, or think back to the Old Testament, Jacob and the angel. It's like they weren't gaming that system, right? They weren't trying to get points, right? Thousands of years ago, they were talking about beating that other person, right? um, so think about that. So especially if you want to compete in catch wrestling, especially if you want to compete in submission only and no gi. And I think that's kind of the way it should be in both, right? Catch wrestling, the real authentic catch wrestling rules, no points, right? You really have to beat that person. Same thing with submission only, no points. You have to beat that person, and no advantages, nothing like that, right? So think about that. If that resonates with you, maybe consider trying to compete in catch wrestling. Are reaching out to compete in catch wrestling. Uh, all right, so we won't make this too long because I know it's a holiday. So thank you for listening or watching. Feel free to become a member of our YouTube channel, or join us in Los Angeles to train. Next, not tonight because the gym is closed, but next week everything will be back to normal. Or if you want to join our online academy, it's a really, really great value. We're always adding videos in the member section. So we have like a whole cool like community thing where you can even download an app, and so then you can be interacting with people on there. So it's a really great value because we're always posting videos on there. So basically answering your questions, videos that are answering your questions. So consider that. And so hopefully everyone has a great holiday. And I know we got more holidays coming up, so I just wanted to get this in quickly, and hopefully we can keep training and competing. All right. So thank you very much. See you next time.